I don't think anybody can say that I've exactly been a supporter or fan of the job that Matt Rule has done the past 2 years in Carolina, and why would you be? Questionable draft approach. I realize you've got a defensive background as a coach, but to sit there and invest all of your draft picks in 2020 on defense and then turn around in the first round in 2021 and take a fucking corner, I don't care how good or great that corner is going to be, it's just really dumb. It's not the way this is supposed to go. Especially when you look at that 2021 draft and you had Justin Fields and Mac Jones were both there on the board for you at pick 8. Why in the hell wouldn't you swing for one of those two quarterbacks? What, because instead you thought you were some type of reclamation project genius and you were going to get Sam Darnold to be what you wanted Sam Darnold to be? Hey, look. The Jets were ready to move on from him after 3 seasons for a reason, for a couple of reasons. One is too mistake prone, 2, too injury prone. And you think magically a change of scenery is just going to change all of that? Well, surprise, surprise, the Sam Darnold gamble did not pay off in 2021. The hell you say, I know. And they gave up some decent draft pick currency to bring in a guy who didn't make it with his first team, the team that drafted him, and now is coming into this situation. Yeah, it looks really, really bad. It feels like one of those decisions that should have gotten a head coach fired. And I only say that because you know he has a tremendous amount of personnel, say, within that organization. But the ironic thing with all of that is, as stupid as the Sam Darnold trade was, and as poorly as that worked out, even for a team that did start 3-0 last year, that's what makes this crap even look worse, is that the Panthers were 3-0 at one point, which means they went 2-12 with the last 14 games of the season. That's bad. That means you face-planted. That means you fell apart. That means that the quarterback move didn't work. That means that the head coach and what he's selling didn't work. What he's doing didn't work. But the ironic thing is that they did all right getting Baker Mayfield for basically draft peanuts. And I know I've talked about Baker Mayfield and call him Baker Midfield and so forth. And the reason for that is it was really dumb for John Dorsey and the Browns to take him number 1 overall in 2018. Especially when you consider the fact that they could have just taken Deshaun Watson the year before, and you say, well, why would you do that? Well, it's a lot better than trading 3 first-round picks and all that they gave up to go bring in Deshaun Watson 5 years later. That's frickin' why. Baker Mayfield had no business ever being the top overall pick in the 2018 draft. He just didn't. When you're taking guys like that, they've got to have elite upside somewhere, and Baker Mayfield just didn't have that. But when you're talking about a situation like the Carolina Panthers, you don't have the pressure of Baker Mayfield having to live up to the top overall pick. That's with another organization. That's their business, not yours. What you know is you got at least an average starting quarterback, which is a big upgrade over Sam Darnold last year. You got an average, at minimum, starting quarterback in the National Football League. That will be an upgrade and a big upgrade to your offense. There's no question about that. So, as bad as the Sam Darnold deal looks in hindsight, at least you could say the Baker Mayfield deal is a move that they had to make. Especially if they weren't going to sit there and, draft a young quarterback last year. And they did draft a young quarterback this year in Matt Corral, but unfortunately, of course, he got hurt. So now he's out, it looks like, for the entire season. In terms of the offseason for the Panthers, they lost Hassan Reddick, lost Stephon Gilmore, lost Daquan Jones. Signed in return Austin Corbett to that offensive line. Drafted Ike Ekwonu from NC State to play left tackle, so they beefed up that offensive line, which needed some help from last year. Xavier Woods, Johnny Hecker, Matt Ioannidis. So they did bring in some pieces around Baker Mayfield and onto that defense. But, the bottom line is it's an offense-first game, and maybe, just maybe, Matt Rule's starting to figure that out. Because, again, I come back to, I don't care how well the draft from 2020 ultimately pans out. I don't care how great J.C. Horn ultimately ends up being. The fact that you invested so heavily on defense in 2020 and 2021 is really dumb. Period. There's no reason to debate about it in the comments. There's no reason to argue about it because you know it's true. Offense rules the day in the NFL. You have to have an offense. The Panthers didn't have an offense last year. Now, part of the reason they didn't have an offense last year as well is because they didn't have Christian McCaffrey, but for more than, a couple of games? So you're looking at this team and you're hoping that Baker Mayfield being there, that's a strength for the team, especially compared to previous years. Having Christian McCaffrey healthy, you've got a versatile, multifaceted weapon out of the backfield. That's a big help to Baker Mayfield in this offense. DJ Moore is a legit wide receiver one in the league. And I know sometimes we get so caught up in wide receiver one and who's a wide receiver one or not. Sometimes we label wide receiver one as elite. Not every team has an elite number one wide receiver, but plenty of teams have a guy that's capable of being a number one wide receiver, and DJ Moore is that guy. And then you look at this team, and you talk about their defense, specifically their secondary, their pass defense. They better be good as much as they've invested in that defense. They better be good, but I think they are. And when you look at this team on the flip side, some of the concerns that I have is how many games are they going to get from Christian McCaffrey? I think that's a big thing. If Christian McCaffrey is healthy for a full season or close to a full season, this Carolina Panthers team is a lot better in a hurry. And if it's more of the past couple of seasons with Christian McCaffrey, not so much. It's basically Matt Rule business as usual. And then defensively, will they be better at limiting points? Because here's the crazy thing about the Panthers and their defense last year. They finished second in total yards allowed, but 21st in points allowed. That means that their offense was turning the ball over, setting up the opposing teams in good shape, and then the defense wasn't doing enough to clamp down and stop the other teams from scoring. As much as you invest in that defense, it needs to be an elite unit, and that means you can't let teams score so many damn points. Looking ahead to the schedule this year for the Carolina Panthers, at Week 1 matchup, Baker Mayfield taking on his own old Cleveland Browns team in Carolina is going to be a lot of fun. And then you look at those next 2 weeks. Let's just assume for a second that the Baker Mayfield revenge tour goes well for the Panthers in Week 1 and they beat the Browns somehow. It could happen. You look at those next 2 games. At the Giants, hosting the Saints. It is not out of the realm of possibility that the Panthers could start off 3-0 this year again, just like they did last year. Certainly not out of the realm of possibility. You're probably going to need that because the next 4 weeks, you talk about weeks 4 through 7 on that schedule. You host Arizona, host San Francisco, have to travel to the Rams, and you got to host the Bucks. The only good thing about that rough stretch of 4 games is that you've got 3 of them at home. So if you could go 3-0 to start, and then 2-2 somewhere, maybe you pick off, let's say, the 49ers, and maybe you catch the Bucks napping or something, because it's a divisional game, who knows? Now all of a sudden you're sitting there 7 weeks through the season, you're 5-2, you're in pretty good shape. If the Panthers can kind of tread water here at the beginning and middle part of the season, get to the end of the year, they have a chance to make some noise because their end of the season schedule is not as strong, it doesn't look like. They got to go to Seattle, host Pittsburgh, host Detroit, and then close out the season with a couple NFC South games on the road at Tampa and at New Orleans. As much as I'm not a fan of Baker Mayfield and thinking he's a big-time quarterback, he is an upgrade for them. And if you also have not only upgraded the quarterback position, but you upgrade your running back position because you've got Christian McCaffrey healthy for a whole season, and this Panthers team has the potential to surprise some people this year, and I think they do. I think they're going to finish second in this division. I think they're going to win 9 games. 10 games may even be a possibility. But I like them to potentially slide in as one of the last wild cards in the NFC. Call me crazy, but I do.